I'd like to welcome everyone in our council audience tonight, as well as Brady Johnson and our listening audience at WCBU. I'd also like to welcome the audience watching cable channel 22. I'd like to call the meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. Clerk, our council mics are open. Can you please call the roll?
Mayor Ali,
Present.
Councilmember Allen, Councilmember Sear, Councilmember Graham, Councilmember Jackson,
Here.
Councilmember Jensen, Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Euler, Councilmember Riggenbach,
Here.
Councilmember Rockrigo, and Councilmember Valpula.
Present.
We have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Please join me and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk?
We have the notice for town electors to be read tonight.
Okay. This is a notice to our township electors pursuant to Public Act 095-0761. If you desire to have an item considered on the agenda at the annual town meeting to be held Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 at 6:00 p.m., you're required to bring a specific request signed by 15 or more electors to the clerk no later than Tuesday, March the 1st. That would be next Tuesday. Any group of registered voters may request an advisory question of public policy for consideration by the electors at the annual meeting by giving written notice of the specific advisory question to the township clerk in the same matter as required for an agenda item under subsection B of section 3010 of the Township Code. Yes.
We are at proclamations.
We have two proclamations today. The first is in honor of Black History Month. Whereas the city of Peoria celebrates Black History Month and recognizes that people of African descent have been a part of our community since 1773, when Jean-Baptiste Point DeSable purchased land here, according to historian Romeo B. Garrett. And whereas historian Carter G. Woodson, in recognizing the need to acknowledge and celebrate the achievements of Black Americans, developed Negro History Week in 1926, and this expanded to become Black History Month. And whereas since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. February was chosen primarily because the second week of the month coincides with the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Lincoln was influential in the emancipation of slaves, and Douglass, a former slave, was a prominent leader in the abolitionist movement, which fought to end slavery. And whereas the theme for this year's Black History Month, as chosen by the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, is Black Health and Wellness. And whereas this month is a time for all Americans to reflect on the rich history and teaching of Black Americans whose contributions to our economic, cultural, political, and social development are vast. And whereas the City of Peoria is proud to honor the history and contributions of Black Americans in our community, throughout the state, and our nation. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, and on behalf of the Peoria City Council, recognize February as Black History Month in Peoria, Illinois. Our second and final proclamation is for National Peace Corps Week. And we have Ed Berry, architect of Farnsworth and commissioner for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Melody Green, our new City of Peoria Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. They're going to receive the proclamation and have a few words. So, whereas the United States Peace Corps celebrated its 60th year of incredible global volunteerism on March 1st, 2021, with nearly 250,000 Americans serving in 143 countries since its inception. And whereas National Peace Corps Week will be held all across the country from February the 27th through March the 5th of 2022. Whereas in today's complex and challenging world, the original 3-point legislative mandate of Peace Corps, namely to promote world peace and friendship by improving the lives of those they serve, to help others understand American culture, and to bring volunteers' experience back to Americans at home, is needed more than ever before. Whereas the United States Peace Corps and its terrific sister program, AmeriCorps, have served as the inspiration for our very own Peace Corps, which aims to provide young members of our community with essential professional development and leadership skills. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, in recognition of this wonderful American institution, the Peace Corps volunteers and Peoria Corps members who have served as an inspiration to us all, do hereby proclaim the week of February 27th through March 5th, 2022 as National Peace Corps Week. Thank you. Mr. Berry, Ms. Green.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and audience members, I'd really like to thank you for this recognition of the Peace Corps, the U.S. Peace Corps. In my humble opinion, I believe it represents the best of America, the best of the American ideal. And as Dr. Ali mentioned in the proclamation, I think we live in really challenging times, and so those ideals are needed now more than ever. I'd also like to thank you for having established several years ago the Peoria Corps program, which to me is a wonderful and vibrant local relative of Peace Corps through the AmeriCorps sister organization as well. And the mission is the same, to make people be their best, do their best, develop their talents and their leadership. And so again, I think both of those entities are really incredible and appreciate this recognition. I have at the podium beside me Melody Green, who's the Peoria Corps program is under her purview, so I'm going to turn the microphone over to her to say a word.
Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Excuse me, Mayor Ali, council, and gallery members. Thank you for having me here tonight. I would like to extend a great thanks to Mr. Berry, who thought enough of myself to ask me to stand here with him tonight to recognize Peoria Corps along with AmeriCorps for National Peace Corps Week. So just want to say I'm excited to be here, and I am looking forward to working with Peoria Corps to build and support the program as we carry forth the mission of AmeriCorps. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Madam Clerk.
We are at the minutes.
Member Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move to approve the minutes of the joint City Council and Town Board meeting held on February 8th, 2022 as printed.
Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have one public hearing. 22-057 is a public hearing regarding the proposal to consider and approve a business district designation and business district redevelopment plan for the proposed Peoria Keller Station Business Development District, and we need a motion to open the public hearing.
May I have a motion to open? Councilmember Riggenbach, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. There's no discussion. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. I'm going to ask for starters, Mr. Herb Klein with Jacob and Klein Law Firm to give us an overview, please.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Your Honorable Mayors, City Council members, and staff. My name is Herb Klein. I'm an attorney with Jacob and Klein, and together with the Economic Development Group, which is a municipal planning and consulting firm, we've been tasked with evaluating the Keller Station area and coming up with a business development district plan, provided the property qualifies. And this is the plan that we've put together. There's a number of steps in the process under the law in Illinois, one of them being to hold this public hearing. The Keller Station area, I think everyone's pretty familiar with. It's bounded by Knoxville Avenue and the Park District Rock Island Greenway Trail. It's approximately 7 acres. There's approximately 9 significant buildings on the property. We've evaluated the property. It does qualify, in our opinion, under the Act in Illinois due to some deterioration, dilapidation, some vacancies, some inadequate utilities, and really some obsolete platting for modern day development standards. A business development district would impose an extra 1% retail sales tax on that area. That money could be used to fund improvements. It's anticipated a development agreement would be entered into with working with corporate counsel with the developer, offering them some reimbursements for some of their business development district eligible expenses. There's also some significant public improvements to the area, particularly to Knoxville Avenue and the intersection of Knoxville and Prospect. The tax does not apply to groceries, it does not apply to prescriptions, medicines, does not apply to any titled vehicles. But as that area develops and it pays an additional tax and the developer is fully supportive of this, it would create a pool of funds to help renovate that significant historic building and continue to fill out the vacancies that are there. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address them. If there's any comments, obviously, from the public, this is a public hearing.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Klein? Thank you, Mr. Klein. Anyone from the public, is there anyone here that would like to speak at this public hearing regarding the proposal to consider and approve a business district designation and business district redevelopment plan for the proposed Peoria Keller Station Business Development District? Yes, sir. Please give us your name, please.
Yeah, my name is James Reed. I like to work along with the development, the economic development department, if they would require me to do so.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this public hearing regarding the proposed Peoria Keller Station Business Development District? I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by Councilmember Jackson, seconded by Councilmember Velpula. Any other comments or questions? Please cast your ballot. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have one first reading, 22-58, is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 5, Division 7, Section 2-350, Public Safety Benefits Act of the Code of the City of Peoria.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask our interim corporation counsel to describe the ordinance and some of the background.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 2017, the city did a major overhaul to our placebo ordinance, and in that ordinance, we did, under our home rule authority, define some terms that are not defined in the placebo statute. Eventually, that matter ended up in litigation, and the Illinois Supreme Court has determined that it is beyond the city's home rule authority to add definitions that are outside the scope of the statute and have somewhat been determined by case law. So what you have in front of you is a copy of the ordinance that we have proposed that would eliminate those definitions. What the court did not do in its ruling was invalidate any of our administrative procedures, so we are recommending that we readopt and reincorporate those. A copy of this ordinance was shared with counsel for the fire union, who brought both the charge before the labor board, as well as the case that ended up in front of the appellate court. We shared that with their counsel last week. They did provide some comments back to us on Saturday. We have sent those comments off to the counsel that handled the litigation for us. So it is possible that the version that comes back for final adoption could have some minor adjustments from what you see in front of you, but we do believe that the wording will largely be the same.
Okay. Thank you, Counsel. Councilmember Graham?
Thank you, Mayor Ali. Since this particular item has been subject to considerable amount of litigation going all the way to the highest court in the state of Illinois, I think that it would be a good idea, and not being overly critical, but I think it would be a good idea for our staff, our legal staff, to have some substantive discussions with the bargaining units before we approve a first reading of this ordinance. Otherwise, I suspect we're going to get into some of the same problems that precipitated the conflict that took this city to the Illinois State Supreme Court. I think it also is the courteous thing to do to make certain our bargaining units, both on the police and fire side, are on board with what I believe we will ultimately do. And in accord with that, I would ask that we defer receiving and filing this until such time as we can touch base with and have some substantive discussions with the bargaining units, the police and fire departments.
Counsel, Mr. Urick, can you respond to that, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excellent points, Councilman Graham. And again, because of the fact that unfair labor practice is still pending, we have certainly had conversations with both the arbitrator that will hear that case, Mr. Marzullo, and who is the fire union's attorney. He has provided red line copies of that back. As far as our legal opinions on what should or shouldn't be provided to the union, I would be happy in executive session to discuss what we believe are permissive and mandatory subjects of bargaining in regards to this placebo ordinance. But your point is well taken. Thank you.
Councilman Briggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Corporation Counsel, I understand the concerns of my colleague, and I I agree with them. My only question is procedurally, would we be better off to approve, receive, and file the first reading so we have a starting point as we have those discussions, or is it something that would be cleaner from your perspective to just defer this for 2 weeks or whatever?
I would respectfully ask that you move forward with the first reading of this, because it is, in our opinion, striking of the definitions makes it within the core order. We do believe at this point that the union's red line may perhaps overreach the opinions of what the Illinois Supreme Court gave us. We also, again, in executive session, would be happy to discuss that we are currently in bargaining with both the police union and the fire union that the PSEBA statute applies to. And any details as to what should be bargained with them, I would be happy to discuss in closed session.
Because by receiving and file the first reading, we can still put the brakes on it, if you will, when it comes back. This is just to get the ball rolling, so to speak. Would that be fair?
Thank you. Yes.
All right. So I would just throw that out there as consideration, that the receive and file is not final action. As we all know, it'll come back at least once, and that will give us the opportunity. I mean, we have the opportunity today, and I think Councilman Gray eloquently said some concerns that many of us have heard from our employees, but I don't think a deferral would be necessary. I think in 2 weeks, or when this comes back, if there's further concerns, that's when it would be more appropriate to.
Do you have a motion, Councilman?
So I would move to receive and file.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Velpula. Member Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, based on what I just heard Corporation Counsel say regarding some of the proposals by the union's attorney, which you refer to as the red line version, that it may be overreaching. In your opinion, it sounds to me like we might need more than 2 weeks for the attorneys to go back and forth. So I'm more supportive of us deferring this, because when we do a first reading, it comes back in 2 weeks, and it just sounds to me from what I heard and what I've heard from some of our employees and members of the union that it's going to take more than 2 weeks to work it out and to come to an agreement that satisfies everyone. So I would prefer to defer it. So I won't be voting in favor of receiving and file. And I hope that the rest of the council will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? We have a motion on the floor to receive and file. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Jensen. Okay. Madam Clerk?
We are at the consent agenda. 22-59 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class C1 General Commercial District for an adult-use cannabis dispensary for the property located at 4600 North Brandywine Drive. 22-60 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency. 22-61 is a communication with a request for the following. A, approve the low bid of Illinois Civil Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $3,627,117.77 for the combined sewer overflow control project, year 1. And B, to execute the notice of intent to award in the amount of $3,627,117.07 contingent upon award of the IEPA loan for the combined sewer overflow control project for year 1. 22-55 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance approving the whistleblower protections policy. 22-62 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 single-family residential district for a short-term rental for the property located at 307 East Maywood Avenue. 22-63 is a communication with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 single-family residential district for a short-term rental for the property located at 3226 North California Avenue. 22-64 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Unified Development Code relating to manufactured modular building sales. 22-65 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve the site application for a Class K rental hall liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for staged events, doing business as Staged Events 3300 West Willow Knolls, subject to issuance of a certificate of occupancy with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. 22-66 is a communication with a request to approve the site application for a Class B1 restaurant 25% food liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for Pack Liquors, doing business as Jack's on Adams, 107 Southwest Adams Street, contingent upon the issuance of all appropriate permits and a certificate of occupancy with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. 22-67 is a communication from the City Manager and the Community Development Director with a request to receive and file a report about non-owner occupied registration. And 22-68 is a request to approve the committee report policy session from the February 1st, 2022 special City Council meeting regarding redistricting council districts. And that concludes our consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any items to remove from consent? Councilmember Kelly?
Yes, Madam Mayor. 22067, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 22-059, please.
Can you repeat that number, please?
-059. 22-059.
Got it. Thank you. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you. 22061.
Any other items to remove from consent agenda? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda moved by Councilmember Riggenbach, seconded by Councilmember Kelly? Any other questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
22-059 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class C1 General Commercial District for an adult-use cannabis dispensary for the property located at 4600 North Brandywine Drive.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the public and those who may not be aware, this is the first cannabis dispensary that has come before us that has the social equity designation. And just to ensure that we are all on the same page, I would like to defer to our corporation counsel who's going to provide some insight on this, and then that way we can all be better aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mayor. When the state set up the recreational cannabis licensing scheme in 2016 and 2017, They defined a social equity applicant as somebody who has at least 51% ownership and control by an individual who either lives in a disproportionately impacted area for 5 of the last 10 years, and if you look at the map that the state provides, pretty much all of Peoria is considered a disproportionately impacted area, and they or a parent, child, or spouse has been arrested, convicted, or adjudicated of a cannabis-related crime, and then they have to have 10 full-time employees, and more than half of those also have to reside in your disproportionately impacted area, and also either themselves or a parent, spouse, or child have been arrested for, convicted of, or adjudicated delinquent for a cannabis-related offense. Some of the benefits of qualifying as a social equity applicant, and I don't have the full list, but they were eligible for a reduced license fee with the state of Illinois, which is substantial. They are also allowed to be within the minimum distance requirement that is in the state statute. The state says that a cannabis business cannot be located more than 1,500 feet from another cannabis-related business unless you are a social equity applicant, and then you are allowed to be within that 1,500-foot buffer zone. The social equity applicant also has some additional time to identify the location of where their storefront will be. For non-social equity applicants, I believe that they have to identify those when they apply to the state. The social equity applicants are given some additional time to identify those.
Thank you, Council. Councilman?
Thank you, Corporation, Council Kapuska, for walking us through that. And me and you have been getting very acquainted on this. I've learned a lot about this, and because we have a current dispensary in the district, and then we are potentially looking to add a new one. And so you want to definitely make sure that everything is clear. One thing that I will ask is, now that we have our first social equity designation regarding adult use cannabis dispensary, if you look at our ordinance, we don't have anything in our ordinance about social equity designation. And I think that we need to follow suit what other municipalities are doing in the state and added some verbiage to our ordinance just to ensure that those who get the designation operate within the spirit of the designation if they decide to sell or transfer their license. There is some protection at the state level, but we want to make sure that we've got some protection at the city level just to, again, ensure that the spirit of the social equity designation is upheld. So I would like to ask Corporation Council Kapuska to bring back some language here in 2 weeks for us to consider adding to our ordinance. Without further ado, I would like to move for approval.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any discussion? Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have some concerns about this request. When we first started considering these marijuana dispensaries, at first it was medical and then non-medical. We had a number of discussions around this horseshoe during regular meetings and during policy sessions. And during all of those discussions, I was always concerned about us having too many dispensaries in one area of the city. I pushed, along with a couple other council people who are no longer here, for us to have limits per district or per neighborhood. A majority of the council didn't agree with that, but relied their hats upon the state law that said at least we have that protection that no dispensaries would be within 1,500 feet of one another. And the majority of the council thought that that was significant, and that would give us some protection that they wouldn't all be too close and concentrated in one area. Well, unbeknownst to, those of us who voted that way, I didn't vote that way, but the law has been changed. The state made an exception to that 1,500-foot requirement based on, for people that are getting permits under the social equity justice section of the statute. So we no longer have that 1,500-foot protection that this council was relying upon to ensure that we wouldn't have too many dispensaries in one location. So I can't support this at this time. I think it's very important. I know Councilman Allen brought this up over a month ago, that we start looking into adding requirements now that we're getting more applications. And at that time, we requested the city manager to bring back those minutes and the documents and the things that we discussed in those policy sessions and around the horseshoes, so the entire council, now that we have new members, can see what we've considered in the past. And so we can come up with some good solutions and requirements to make sure that we do not have all of these located in one area of the city. I don't want us to, I want to prevent what's happened on Knoxville and University, where we have those corridors of payday loan places, and I don't want the same thing to happen with dispensaries. So I hope moving forward we can come up with a good plan to make sure that doesn't happen. And I will not be supporting this because of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Council, Kapuska.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A conversation that Councilman Allen and I had earlier today is wanting to make sure that this council recognizes that what's before you tonight is a special use permit. It is separate and distinct from the city's licensing process. So we've made cannabis dispensaries subject to our special use process. Everything does eventually have to go through the city's licensing process, however, and that is where we put our additional restrictions. We did not put them in the zoning code. So we could certainly look at revisions to the zoning code. And Councilman, you're right, when the council discussed this in 2017, there was very specific direction given that they did not want to put a cap on the number of licenses at the time. At the time, however, we knew that we were looking at most at having 2 or 3 recreational facilities open in Peoria. That has certainly changed, and as the state has issued additional licenses, that number could certainly be more. But I would recommend that we consider putting that in the licensing section, not necessarily in our zoning code. Other communities haven't done that. Chicago, for example, put it in their zoning code, and I think that that's where some confusion comes in, that we do have 2 separate, distinct processes. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, Council. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to thank Councilman Allen for his extra due diligence on this. Clearly, there's many layers to the onion, as they say, when you deal with this, and it's still an evolving process. I think we can all be thankful that the dispensaries we have just become such strong neighbors, and that many of the fears that people had 5 years ago haven't materialized. They're some of the safest places in town by some accounts, and now with the new twist with the I wouldn't say ESG, but that's my financial advisor coming through, with the additional licenses being made available. I think Corporation Council hit the nail on the head here, that we really do owe it to ourselves to review the licensing aspect of it. So, Councilman Allen, again, thanks for the leadership on this, and I would just echo that I think this needs a little closer look here as the industry evolves. Okay. But I will be supporting this tonight, obviously. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I agree with the comments from Councilmember Jensen. As I said a while ago, we do need to consider our strategy because whether we know it or not, we are in the marijuana business. And so we need to be proactive to ensure that we are considering our neighborhoods, our city, and what we want that to look like. So I definitely agree with those. I appreciate Corporation Counsel Kapuska really letting us know what we are voting for. That's why I initially put my light on, to let us know that we are voting for the special use zoning process permit tonight and not the actual license. So this by no means is this, in blood, by no means, but this is just the first step. So I just want to provide some additional clarity for those around the horseshoe in our listening audience. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments, questions? Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question for Corporation Counsel. It's my understanding that there's some pending litigation before the Illinois Supreme Court regarding the social equity justice licenses. So I guess I have a question if you're aware of that, and what's the impact if they rule against the issuance of these licenses, then what happens to this special use permit?
That's an excellent question, Councilwoman. I am aware. We've been attempting to follow that. I believe the litigation was involved with the lottery of licenses that were issued for social equity applicants, however. And I think that the Peoria region, our lottery applicants for that were issued in August, were two companies, Green Skies and Project Equity Illinois Incorporated. So the company whose name appeared on the special use permit, we weren't able to determine if they were issued as part of the lottery, but from the research we did, we don't believe so. That is something that before we could issue the city license, we would need clarity on.
So if it turns out that they can't legally get the permit, then will we rescind the permit? I understand we just wouldn't issue a license, but what happens then to that special use permit?
It would be vacated. I mean, the state of Illinois would revoke their license first. But I think Leah may have some more specific information about how that would continue to operate at that particular location.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, if the special use is approved, but they are unable to fulfill the completion or establish the business within 2 years, it becomes null and void.
Okay.
So it as a natural course would not be a valid special use.
Thank you.
Councilmember Graham?
I think the big debate that occurred in 17 was where we would allow these to go in our city. And frankly, we were on the minority side, Councilor Jensen, on this. The council at that time, which was seated at that time, felt that they could go wherever a drugstore might be able to go, which meant commercial locations, which may abut vibrant neighborhoods. So that's how we've gotten to this point. Manager, putting this into the larger context, which we talked about, or Corporation Counsel Kapuska, where do we stand right now with that dispensary that I believe was approved some months ago on University?
Thank you, Council. To my knowledge, the city only has 2 existing cannabis licenses, and it is not for a facility on University.
There's nothing coming in at University and Glen.
We only have 2 cannabis dispensaries licenses that have been issued in the city, correct?
Okay. And we don't know of any application coming forward in the Glen and University area?
I haven't received any applications to review for that location. No, sir.
Any other comments? We have a motion on the floor to approve, and we have a second. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 2 nays, Jensen and Sear. Madam Clerk?
22-61 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request for the following: A, to approve the low bid of Illinois Civil Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $3,627,117.07 for the combined sewer overflow control project for year one, and B, to execute the notice of intent to award in the amount of $3,627,117.07, contingent upon the award of the IEPA loan for the combined sewer overflow control project for year one. And we'll need two separate motions.
Sure. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I pulled this because, this is something we've been talking about for a number of years, but the communication isn't clear on what exactly it does the combined sewer overflow control project year one. What is it? Can you briefly describe what that includes? I know we have a map of where it's going, but that's all we have. So for our benefit and for the public's, I think it would be good to just talk about briefly what that's going to entail, since it's such a high dollar figure and a big part of what the city's going to be doing for the next 18 years.
Director Powers, can you summarize some of the projects we'll be working on in the specific area that's been outlined?
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening. There will be several projects, again, outlined within the boundaries you have in the map. All of them will be, in year one, will be drainage centric for basic separation of any combined sewers into storm and or sanitary throughout that area. There are a number of them, too many to provide here tonight, but I could get you a project list if you would like, Counselor, of the actual projects that entailed in the contract if you desire.
I'd like that.
Sure.
I think the whole council
We'll get you
would.
a project list. But it is a great number of them, and again, we would anticipate going forward, this would be, as you noted, our first step toward the first milestone over this 18-year course of about $109 million investment. So again, rather than try to, I do not have the list with me. I could provide it to you as a report back.
Okay.
But they are going to be drainage. All of them will be drainage related.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You have a motion?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I move to approve the low bid of Illinois Civil Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $3,627,117.07 for the combined sewer overflow control project year one.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Seer. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Jensen?
I move to approve or to execute the notice of intent to award in the amount of $3,627,117.07, contingent upon award of the IEPA loan for the combined sewer overflow control project year one.
Seconded by Councilmember Seer. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
22-67 is a communication from the City Manager and the Community Development Director with a request to receive and file a report about non-owner occupied registration.
For Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would ask the council if you can have a look at the legislation text of the report that Director Doolin has put together at the request of the manager. Under background, it says, Councilman Kelly requested a report back on the impact of the non-owner occupied registration fee. I asked for a report on the 11th of January about landlord registration. And when, Mr. Manager, you began to talk about the fee, I believe I tried to make myself clear. in that I had no interest at this point in the fee. What I had an interest in is what was the state of substandard rental housing in Peoria when this program began, and what is the state of substandard rental housing in Peoria today, to gauge whether or not this program has worked. The report we have here doesn't talk about that at all. So I am not going to move to receive and file this. And if the manager wishes, perhaps at our next meeting, we could have a report on what I asked for, or if not, I have some other ideas I'd like to go forward with.
A new report back.
Sorry.
You want a new report back on your more specific request, your clarified request.
Yes, I think the request was clear at the outset. Madam Mayor, perhaps it was not, but I think it was rather clear at the outset. My suspicion is that we don't have data that can produce such a report. I'd like to find that out before I go forward with some other ideas I have about this. As I think you know, Madam Mayor, I am very concerned about substandard rental housing in Peoria. And it's a big problem. I have a suspicion, only that, a suspicion that this program that we have has not accomplished anything, or has accomplished very, very little, and that the fees that we want to talk about have gone to things like roads, et cetera, not to the program. So if the manager would like to bring a report forward at the next meeting, that would be fine. If not, that would be fine. And I would like not to move to receive and file this report. It's not what I asked for.
Do you want to defer this and get with the manager to provide more clarification on your more specific request?
I am very available for discussion at almost any time with the manager and with the director. They've both been, we've always had good communication. I don't know if a deferral is proper. If a deferral
Do you want to withdraw? Is this your, no, it's not a withdrawal situation, is it?
I'm just not going to make a motion.
You want to, what's your motion, sir?
I'm not going to make a motion to receive and file.
Okay. You don't have a motion then?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Does anybody have a motion? Councilmember Riggenbach?
I have a motion, and can I make some comments as well? I'll move to receive and file this, and I would like to acknowledge the efforts of community development and Director Doolin in putting this together. I think when we talk around the horseshoe about how we spend money and where money goes, to be able to have a report like this that specifies and itemizes things that have changed since that registration process was put in place is amazing. And I know this isn't the time to debate the specifics of it, but I think that this shows the value of the process that's in place. Can it be tweaked? I'm sure it can be, but to look at the things that have been done and to be able to track the landlords, if nothing else, I think is a huge step forward from where we are. So I acknowledge you, Councilman Kelly. This isn't what you asked for, but I think this is some incredible information for the public to get their hands on, so I will move to receive and file.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Sear. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilman Kelly, for making your request, because I think this is an important thing to talk about. I've got 2 points. One, which isn't included in this report, which I think needs to be included when we have a discussion about the report that Councilman Kelly's asked for, is this program started out not just as a rental registration program. It was rental registration and inspection. And the fee was originally intended to pay for those rental inspections. That part of the program was in existence from 1995 until sometime around 2008, 2009, when the council cut the inspection part of the program due to budget cuts. So that was a big component of the program, and I think that needs to be part of the report on the fee and on the whole program and whether or not it worked. So that's my first point. My second point, regarding the data that Councilman Kelly is requesting, there is data about what the standard of the housing stock and the rental housing stock was in Peoria at the time that we adopted the ordinance. I was here and in the legal department at that time and helped write the ordinance and then set up the program. And then between 1997 and 1999, there was a federal lawsuit. A group of landlords sued the city of Peoria and sued that based on that ordinance, arguing that it was unconstitutional and a number of other things. And we filed a summary judgment motion and included that data in the summary judgment motion after a summer long of all these depositions. So even if it's not in the legal department or in the planning department anymore, it would be in the federal court in their records, because that data was attached to our briefs that were filed in that case. And we were granted, the judge awarded the summary judgment motion in favor of the city. But our big briefs included all of that data that the city had before we adopted that ordinance. So that at least would give you a start to provide the information that Councilman Kelly's looking for. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Graham?
I think it's appropriate that we actually let the community development director, who oversees this process, say a few syllables. I think maybe that might be in order, folks. He heads up community development. Part of that is code enforcement. Director Doolin, would you please make a full-throated defense or lack of defense for what you're doing?
Yes, sir. This is actually a really hard report back to give. I understand what Councilman Kelly was looking for, but I thought with the report back, I wanted to tell a more complete story about the rental registration fee. As Councilman Jensen mentioned, back when it was originally adopted, it included a pretty robust rental inspection program that's been tweaked over the years. I think it was in 2007, the code enforcement staff was reduced down from 16 inspectors to 13, and then there were 4 specifically for the rental inspection program. At that time, then in 2008, 2009, it was reduced further down to 12, and at that point, the proactive rental inspection program went away. So I think when assessing the question of I don't actually view the non-owner occupied property registration as a program necessarily. I view it more as a tool for our code inspectors to do their job out in the field. Very often, we get calls from tenants with their issues at properties. We use the data very often to get phone numbers, to contact them, to get issues resolved quickly. One of the biggest things our staff has tried to do over the last 5 or 6 years is really make headway with the landlord community to improve the relationship we have with them. Part of that, and the comments we receive them about, is communication, making sure we are communicating with them when something is going on at their property. That has really helped us establish really positive relationships with the landlord community. Specifically, there's a group of landlords we meet on a monthly basis with. Through those initial discussions, we launched a notification system now too as well, that they get a text or email alert when we abate a property. So I think it's to evaluate the impact that tool has in how the code inspectors do their job on a daily basis, it's very hard to look at housing conditions in Peoria and really assess whether the quality of their job. I mean, the reality is based on up in probably the funding for the community development department, as with other departments throughout the years, has experienced some budget cuts. But I think, I've talked to many of you about it. Going into 22 and 2023, we were so excited for the American Rescue Plan funds and what we can actually do to improve housing stock. And I think it's a fair question to ask that what work we're actually doing and if it's making a positive impact not only on non-owner occupied property, but just the housing stock overall. And that's why we're emphasizing very much to kind of use the programs we have now to create a baseline for the future to see the success of those programs. But I think that it's very hard to evaluate a tool of landlords providing their contact information and name to be able to directly tie that to housing conditions. Doesn't necessarily paint the entire picture of what code enforcement has done throughout the years of the city of Peoria. And I think that what we tried to do with the report is show that the reason we have a fee is similar to why we have liquor license fees, because of the impact they sometimes have in our community. Data shows that a majority of the code violations unfortunately occur at non-owner occupied properties compared to the overall percentage of properties in Peoria that are non-owner occupied. And I think back in 2015, when we did raise the fee, we were very transparent with what the fee increase was going towards. It allowed us to increase our weed and litter budget to actually abate code violations in the field. It allowed us to add a residential police officer to the center bluff. It allowed us to do more board ups, more demos. And I think, those are having a successful impact in our community. And while we might not be getting ahead of the issues due to, unfortunately, just overall resources the last 15 or 20 years, I think with the funding we have this year and the staffing we have this year, I've never been more positive or excited about, coupled that with the fantastic staff that we currently have, that we're actually going to start making some headway on improving the housing conditions in the city of Peoria. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I kind of wanted to get it all. I think we have a fantastic staff who works very hard. I think that this is one tool they appreciate. This is one tool that they use on a very common basis to make those direct connections. It's much easier to call a landlord and say, hey, has your tenant talked to you and told you your furnace is out? Than trying to figure out another way to get in contact with them, send them a mailing, send them a notice. Maybe they'll get it in a few days. That doesn't directly affect the tenant that has the furnace out. So it's a very valuable tool we use a lot, very often for life safety issues. I know the Neighborhood Services Unit, the Police Department uses the list quite often, as well as the Fire Department often when they have fires at these rental properties to make sure they can contact the landlord and know when things are happening.
Thank you, Director. Thank you very much. And Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say I don't know that I'd take second place to anyone in my admiration for the job that Director Doolin is doing. That's not my beef. It is not my intent either to go over the whole rental registration thing right now. That's a big topic, and I plan on coming back to it. My problem is that this says Councilman Kelly requested a report back on the impact of the non-owner occupied registration fee. That is not so. It's a wonderful report. I enjoyed reading it. I learned a lot. My intent is not to beat up on the Community Development Department or Director Doolin. I'm just saying this is not what I asked for.
Okay.
And so I will not be voting to receive and file
Sure.
it. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Director. Mr. Manager, do you understand the request, the report back?
Yes, we do, and we'll certainly work to address Councilman Kelly's request.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 2 nays, Kelly and Euler. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 22-69 is a communication from the City Manager and Economic Development Department with a request to approve revisions to the Jobs Training Program.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you know, we are rolling out the programming that we're using American Rescue Plan funds for. This is the next program that we have that ties in with our economic development bucket of funds from the American Rescue Plan, where we're focusing some of these resources directly towards jobs training. I'd like to ask Kevin Evans from our economic development team to come forward and just describe the program and what we're trying to do here. And thank you, Mr. Evans, for being here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Madam Mayor, council members. So this is our next installment in deployment of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. One of the things that we're seeking to do here is that we have in the past had workforce and jobs training programs that reside within a couple of the TIFs that we have. And so the idea here is that we'd like to take that existing plan, redeploy these dollars so as to more broadly distribute those benefits throughout the city. So one of the recommendations that we're making here is the deployment of the funding, the use of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars in lieu of TIF dollars that allows us to more broadly distribute these benefits throughout the city. The other piece is that with respect, we've given you some background on the kind of programming that we've done around workforce training and the partnerships that we've funneled that deployment through. We anticipate that we'll have similar partnerships with local not-for-profits and other organizations around specific workforce trainings. We're currently in the midst of kind of negotiating some of that in alignment with the nuance between what the TIF requires and what the American Rescue Plan Act requires. I think it's worth noting that much of the funding will be deployed within the qualified census tracts is a high priority in terms of the deployment to these dollars. In addition to that, we'll be looking at specific jobs and specific skill sets that we'd like to try and see and encourage here in the city. So those are kind of the big ideas. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you guys have about the details of some of the work that we're doing around this.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Evans. Just a quick question. This is an incredible program. And as we all drive around the city of Peoria, we all see these help signs everywhere. There's a lot of jobs out there. And I understand that we need to train these young kids for the job in the future. This is very, very important. My question to you, though, is how do we stay accountable to the taxpayers on how successful we will be with this investment?
Thank you, Councilman Sear. So within our existing program, the programs are really put together around a set of offerings that they intend. We do some, I'll call it negotiation on the number of constituents that they serve. So if you look through the background of some of the previous programs, you'll see that there are a number of identifiable participants or users that they intend to serve. And we periodically being typically quarterly, have them submitting reports, and we're reviewing those reports based on performance based on a set of metrics that are contained within an agreement that we negotiate upfront.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. We like the words performance-based. Mr. Evans, the payment is based upon reimbursement. Is that right? It's not upfront?
So in the sample agreement that you had, that was a reimbursement. We don't anticipate that these are going to be necessarily reimbursement agreements. These will be agreements that will likely be built around a set of needs that they have. So we're not anticipating that these will be reimbursements.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Evans. Could you I just have a question. Is placement part of your performance matrix?
I'm thinking through some of the agreements that we have in place. I don't know that it's necessarily a metric that we have in any of the existing, but we do get reports periodically on placements with respect to one of the particular programs that I'm kind of thinking through.
I'm not in your business, but it seems to me that that's ultimately our goal. And to see if we're on track with training, placement would be a very good metric. If we're training people for the wrong things, that doesn't help them. If we're not able to place these folks, then we have to step back a little bit. I don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel, but if you could find ways to incorporate placement with your other metrics, I think it would be very helpful to this body and probably helpful to the system as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely, that's fair. Councilmember Graham?
Mr. Evans, thank you for attending tonight. One of the things that I'd like to ask is, are these the organizations that have successfully applied to administer programs, the 5 that are listed on this sheet?
List of previous programs, yes, in the past. Some of them we are currently negotiating with as well, and we've identified an additional number of partners that around a set of job training programs that they currently have. So, did that answer your question?
So what are we actually being asked to do?
So we're providing financial support around specific job training programs.
Through the American Rescue Act funding, correct?
And we plan to deploy the American Rescue Act funding for that use.
And the 5 organizations that are listed here, Gifts in the Moment, Peoria Public Schools, Tri-County Urban League Elite, METEC, do we have a dollar amount that they are being awarded at this time?
Councilman, they're not specifically being awarded grants at this time. These were prior grantees when we were giving money out of the TIF program. So this is just a list of prior grantees. As Mr. Evans said, what we're doing is we're negotiating with other job providers and job training providers in the community, and those agreements will come back and bring those back to you for execution. But at this point in time, this is just the blanket approval of the program of the $300,000 that we would be setting aside. So,
yeah, the way it's worded, I wasn't sure what we're doing tonight. I mean, anyway, so going forward, we're going to attempt to do vibrant jobs training programs using American Rescue Act monies in concert with organizations that exist in this community that will be applying for these funds.
That are currently providing job training programs in the community.
And these are past organizations that have done apparently a good job.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's what I need to know because I wasn't understanding. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Councilmember Rodrigo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question as well, kind of following the same line of thought there. Will grantees be creating new job training positions that don't currently exist? Since this is new money coming in from the federal government through us, will those be additional, slots within job training programs, or will we just be underwriting an existing job training program? Will the net end result increase in capacity?
That's the intent. And so we've identified some previous programs that we are having conversations about expansion. We've also identified additional programming that we have not done in the past And where we are is trying to make sure that we've got that in alignment with the requirements of the American Rescue Act plan. But yes, the goal would be at the end is that we would be actually providing support for a job training that is in excess of what we've been able to do in the past.
And the examples we have here tonight are excellent examples of that. And so somebody who may have had 40 positions within their job training may increase that to 45 or 50. So we would see a net increase based on additional dollars being put into the program.
Yes, and I think one of the examples that I think that we can talk about in terms of some of the things that are on the horizon is that we've got an employer that's seeking to expand the number of jobs at their location and trying to help negotiate the use of these funds for that additional training at their specific site.
Great. Thank you for that information.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Jensen.
If you need a motion, I will move to approve.
Is there a seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel? Any other comments or questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
22-70 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending a special use ordinance number 14789 in a Class C2 large-scale commercial district for a shopping center to add textile manufacturing for the property located at 2323 West Pioneer Parkway, 2311 West Pioneer Parkway, 2327 West Pioneer Parkway, and 2401 West Pioneer Parkway, Peoria, Illinois.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask Director Doolin to come up to the microphone to just explain kind of why we've fast-tracked this item, as well as I think there is a representative of Natural Fiber Welding that's here as well. We want to recognize them as well. So, Director Doolin?
Mr. Manager, Mayor, thank you very much. Very excited to bring forward this item. Just a quick overview. This is the old Shopko out on Pioneer Parkway. I want to give special recognition to our building inspectors and fire inspectors who don't often get the notoriety of on an economic development project being recognized. But this building 8 or 9 months ago had an incredible bad mold problem, and they took some enforcement action, and the property was sold, cleaned up. The new owner was looking for a tenant, and a fantastic partner with Natural Fiber Welding came forward. They wanted to sign the lease, so we had to have a special Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and get this on your agenda. I want to recognize our Planning and Zoning Commission, who was very willing to have that special meeting to get this so Natural Fiber Welding can start the process. Commissioner Berry is with us, so appreciate him, the whole commission, for doing that. This was a text amendment, a special use amendment that needed to happen for this to occur, but there's unanimous support by our Planning and Zoning Commission. Very excited. Matt Nelson with Natural Fiber Welding is here, but I wasn't sure if Councilman Sear wanted to make a couple comments as well before Matt Nelson came up as well.
Councilman Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In keeping with the spirit of the Winter Olympics that just concluded, in the 5th District we have many gold medalist businesses, and we all heard, if you have not, I don't know where you've been, but we all heard of Natural Fiber Welding. They've been they're a great startup company, and they're just not a startup company. They're just growing at a terrific pace. And I'm really honored tonight to introduce Matt Nelson, who's the Director of Engineering for Natural Fiber Welding, and give us some more details about what's going on at that location in the 5th District. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Nelson. Welcome.
Thank you. I guess there is a letter that was part of the packet that went forward, and I guess I can answer additional kind of questions there, but I really wanted to come just to on behalf of our CEO and founder, Dr. Luke Haverhals, and really all the team members at Natural Fiber Welding, just to extend our gratitude to Mayor Ali, the council members, and the Planning and Zoning Commission. So in 5 years, we've been able to create about 200 jobs here in Peoria. And with this zoning approval, we will continue to have options to expand our Claris development and operations. So that's the yarn sort of technology that we have. And we're proud to have our roots here in Peoria. And we're grateful to be part of this resourceful and hardworking, and innovative community. So.
Proud that you chose Peoria. Councilman?
Thank you very much. Move forward with this request. Thank you.
Seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to extend my appreciation for you all investing here in Peoria, repurposing a vacant building, a vacant structure that has been dormant for a while. I remember the old days of Shopco and going in there. It's been a while since it's been open, so we appreciate you all repurposing that. It's a great location, and you all are a testament, and to steal a line from Mayor Ali, Peoria is a headquarters town, and you all are demonstrating that, and you also are demonstrating that it does play in Peoria. So I'm super excited to support you tonight, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck in your future endeavors. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Very welcome. Councilmember Velpula?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been following the growth of the Natural Fiber Welding since its inception, and so I know how hard it is from a startup company to where you are now. And I especially thank you for choosing Peoria. The reason the number of jobs that you get and the innovation status that you bring to Peoria would bring back the confidence into Peoria and will support our economy. So thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Graham?
Thank you very much for coming tonight. I want to ask a broader question here, Manager. Are we opening up Pioneer Parkway for factories to be built now? Special use protected, so that we're not going to have factories going up by taking action tonight on this.
So this is a special use, and with the special use that we're talking about, this would allow them to work. I believe that there's some specific language in the zoning code that pertains to them directly. Maybe if we could ask Assistant Director Allison to come forward and just kind of explain how this ties in within this specific area and the requirement that you have the special use. This doesn't open it up to further industrial development.
Thank you, council members. So this is a special use for with an existing shopping center, that the opportunity to add an additional use for textile manufacturing. It doesn't change the original composition of the shopping center. It just allows this additional use. The activity will occur entirely within the building. So there isn't any kind of exterior manufacturing going on. It's all contained within the building. But it doesn't interfere or alter any other uses within the shopping center or any future uses that would come to the shopping center. Does that answer your question?
If we had a cement factory that wanted to put up shop somewhere on Pioneer Parkway, would our approving this tonight make it difficult for us to disapprove that on a later night?
I think each application before you is reviewed on its own merits and independent of any, action that you have today. It's reviewed based on the specific site, the specific zoning, and the specific characteristics of that proposal before you in the future.
So this isn't going to be a shotgun marriage with any factory that might want to come up here on Pioneer Parkway, for example. I just want to be sure that we're not opening up this area in the vibrant 5th District, which has all those gold medals, to unwanted industrialization. We all like Matt. We all like Ralph Lauren. Well, maybe most of us do, I don't know. But I think it's important that we understand this is what a special use permit, very specific to this only. And this will protect, I think, us and assure our constituents out there who might have been concerned about odors, et cetera, that we're not just opening this corridor up, vibrant corridor, to factory development. Thank you.
Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To your point, Councilman Graham, if you know of anyone, especially a cement shop that would want to open on Pioneer Parkway, if you've been driving your car over there, I want to talk to that company right away because we need more cement on Pioneer Parkway.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to approve and second as well. If there's no more comments, please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
22-71 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve the site application for a Class C1 packaged goods liquor license with retail sale of alcohol for In-N-Out Market, doing business as In-N-Out Market, 304 Southwestern Avenue, contingent upon compliance with all community development sign regulations, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve.
Mr. Manager, any insight here?
Maybe if I could turn the floor over to the Interim Corporation Counsel to let her discuss this item.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Willie and Shanta Williams are the owners of this market, and they did present a site application for a C1, which is a packaged goods liquor license, to their existing convenience store. They indicated they wanted to sell liquor, wine, beer, and spirits. The commission did narrowly vote to approve this by a vote of 3-2, and notably it was over the objection of the police department. I believe Officer Slavens is here tonight if you would like to hear more details about the police department's objection that they raised.
Thank you, Officer Slavens.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager. Chief invited me tonight to address any concerns or questions that the council may have this evening regarding the site application. I believe in your packet, you should see the police department's letter outlining our recommendation for denial. I was here 5 months ago on another application, and I'll reiterate some of the points that I spoke to you last time. A site application is about the suitability of site for said location. It is about the location, the location, the location. And nowhere in the letter will you hear us reference anything about the applicant. Corporation Counsel addressed the applicants. I have had a chance to go down to those stores. The renovation of this store has, it's a very nice store. A few years back it caught fire, so the renovations that they have done to this facility, this building, are very nice. Considering our denial, we look at where it is located within the city. This location is in Police District 8, which is one of our busiest districts, and it borders our very busiest district to the west, just on the other side of Western. So we do have a high call volume down there for police services, which would make this application a favorable location for a liquor store. The other consideration, too, was the close proximity to other retail establishments that sell alcohol. Just 4 blocks to the south is Walgreens, and 5 blocks to the north. Western Liquors, and 5 blocks to the north is Walgreens, as well as 2 other liquor stores up on Western. So the police department had a difficult time appreciating any economic benefit to this business in the neighborhood regarding this application.
Thank you, Officer Slavens. Council Member Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to preface my comments. Well, I am not, unfortunately, going to support this tonight, but I will say that I have met Mr. and Mrs. Simmons, and we appreciate what you are trying to do in the first district, particularly the South Side. But when I went back and forth on this issue, and I had to look at what we're trying to do further down the line. Right now, that particular part of the community is extremely vulnerable, and we are trying to look at how we can return Western Avenue to some sort of business district that we once enjoyed. And I honestly believe that with the existing standalone and some larger scale establishments that sell alcohol, this is not going to bring anything new. But in fact, as we look to redevelop Western Avenue further up, as Councilman Graham has sought to get the other stretch of the roadway improved and redeveloped, it will not look as attractive to future investors if we have a slew of standalone alcohol establishments on Western Avenue. So we are trying to look at the future, how we can attract larger businesses as we move to try to redevelop that area. So I will not be in support of this because this would not be consistent with what we have done as a council. But I do appreciate what Mr. and Mrs. Simmons is trying to do, but we have to at the end of the day, look at the bigger picture. So I will not support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Do you have a motion?
Yes,
Councilwoman?
Madam Mayor, I would make a motion that we deny this request for a liquor license for In-N-Out Market LLC at 304 Southwestern Avenue.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jackson? Yeah. Okay. Motion is approved with 1 nay. Allen. Thank you, officer. You might want to stick around.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Clerk.
22-72 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve the site application for a Class C1 packaged goods liquor license with retail sale of alcohol for TNT Tires and Auto, Inc., doing business as TNT Outlet, 2203 Southwest Jefferson Avenue, contingent upon compliance with Community Development Department sign regulations, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've asked Investigator Slavin if he would also speak again on this particular site. My motion will be the same as the previous motion to deny this request for the same reasons.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Officer Slavins.
Thank you. Again, this store is also located in Police District 8, so some of the factors in the last consideration for denial are the same with this one. Again, Police District 8 is extremely busy, and I want to make this point clear. The suitability of site, we're here for the location, and in the council packet that you received, one of the police department's concerns was the close proximity to St. Anne's Church. I believe Father Freehill from St. Anne's wrote a letter to the commission that should be included in your packet, obviously not in favor of site approval for this location as well. And historically, site approvals have been really difficult to revoke once approved when there are issues down the road. And again, I want to reiterate this. The site application has nothing to do with the applicant and everything to do with the site. Location, location, location. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, officer. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Velpula?
Thank you, Mr. Slavens. While I appreciate the whole hard work and I appreciate the discussion today, so
Can you speak a little bit closer into the mic?
do you
Thanks.
have any metric to say that this kind of business will really create a problem? Do you have a metric to really say that having a liquor store? I totally understand the concept, but just for the sake of understanding, so we'll say that there's a business store, and we'll say that it'll have more traffic. I understand it's the busiest area. I understand it's more vulnerable area, but but let's say a lot of effort was put by the owners also in pursuit of having this. So how do we really help rather than shooting this down? I mean, I just wanted to
Sure,
learn that.
we're just simply making a recommendation, and a lot of that recommendation is numbers driven. So, as I said, in the letter you will see that consideration of Police District 8, 2, 3, and 4, they all touch District 8. A third of all of our police calls for service last year were in those 4 districts alone, and 41% of our major crime incidents or crimes of violence were in those 4 districts alone. Liquor stores are a hub of our hot spots. We take that into consideration, as well as if there's any citizen complaints during this application process where someone may call or write in, supply documentation for the commission to consider, or even attend the meeting to voice their concerns with litter, loitering, noise, more vehicle traffic, more foot traffic. There's probably at least 2 or 3 stores in the city that some on the council have probably received, complaints on that we've dealt with over the years. We don't take these recommendations lightly, but they are with merit on why we're denying them, and it's simply a recommendation. But historically, liquor stores in blighted neighborhoods, struggling neighborhoods, have led to the increase of those crimes and those nuisance properties.
Thank you so much. I'm just trying to understand the rationale behind us, turning down this request. It's not necessary that you'll always get a big business to, a vulnerable community. We'll start with small steps. So probably that's what I was thinking, but I appreciate your thoughts, and thank you for helping me out.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the investigation that you have done, sir, and I definitely support my colleague, Ms. Denise Jackson, and I understand what we're trying to do in the 1st District, and so I do want to just defend the reason why I did vote no previously, and the reason why I will vote no this time was the support of entrepreneurship versus a convenience store that's going to sell liquor. And so I do think sometimes we've got to plant that seed in order for entrepreneurship to blossom. I think that the Simmons couple could possibly, in 5 years, open up a full-fledged grocery store if this seed is planted and nourished and watered. And so I do want to just defend the reason why I'm voting the way I am. I do understand and I respect my colleague in requesting the investigation that you all have done tonight, but I just wanted to defend my vote tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no more comments, we have a motion to deny and a second. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Allen. Thank you, officer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Clerk?
22-73 is a communication from the City Manager and Interim Corporation Counsel with a request to adopt an ordinance establishing the attached map as the new City Council district boundaries.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to, again, ask our interim corporation counsel to just walk through some of the information that she shared with you this evening. We do have map 2.3 is the recommended map that's here in front of you tonight, asking you to consider that for approval. Maybe if I could turn the floor over to you.
Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I provided some information earlier today because I know that there has been a heated question about when do the new redistricting maps become effective. So I thought it was useful to look at what happened in 2012. And in 2012, the City Council adopted the new map in June of 2012, and they gave it an effective date of October 1st, 2012. So June 2012, effective date October 1, 2012. There are a couple of statutes that Phil and Zini and I walked through to determine and try to give you an exact date, and it's really hard to give you a drop dead date of when you need to have a map accomplished by, because our electoral structure doesn't fit squarely within either one of the statutes because of our consent decree. But one of the statutes will tell you we generally need to have a new map in place within 1 year of the receipt of our census data, and we received our census data in August of 2021. Another statute will tell you that you need to have your map done at least 30 days before the first date that petitions can be filed in the next election. Well, we know our next election is for at-large council districts, which really aren't affected by the map, versus we have a couple of more years before the district council members would be up for election. But the statute does say the very next election. It does not say a district election. So with Phil's guidance, we will tell you that we believe your map needs to be adopted by October 1st at the very latest, preferably somewhere closer to August, but you do have some wiggle room. Based on what the council did before, we do recommend adopting the map soon and having an effective date that is several months out so that we can start to educate our citizens and your constituents on who they should start to turn to for constituent services, exactly where those boundaries are, who they need to reach out to, perhaps subscribing to something else on Nextdoor, just so that they have all of that information. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Council. And just a reminder to the public that every 10 years, just like we have the census every 10 years, we have to look at our council districts to make sure that they're balanced in population, fairly equal in population. And between 2010 and 2020, there was a significant shift in population. That population shifted really north of the city. So within District 1, we needed to expand that district by a little over 3,900. District 2 needed to grow by a little over 1,500. District 3 needed to grow by a little over 1,100. And then District 4 needed to be reduced by a little over 1,300 people, and District 5 needed to be reduced by a little over 5,500 people. So in order to get that balance of close to 22,600 people, we have to draw a new map. We have to draw new lines in order to keep the balance. So that's the process that we've been going through for the last several weeks, for the last couple of months. And there's some criteria that has guided us in this process. And that criteria in looking at a new map, and the map that is on the table here, we're calling 2.3, meets much of the requirements, or all of those requirements, for having a nearly equal population, districts that are compact, that are contiguous, that respect geographical boundaries, political subdivisions, or communities with actual shared interests, and also those that preserve incumbent districts. So those are the criteria that have guided our process, and I just wanted to give that background. Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move to adopt an ordinance establishing the attached map version 2.3 as the new city council district boundaries effective May 1st, 2022. Thank you.
Effective May the 1st, 2022. Is there a second? Is seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Discussion, Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be supporting this map. As I indicated at our last meeting, I think this is too significant of a decision. As the mayor just pointed out, we make it once every 10 years, and we only met twice in 2 policy sessions and are adopting a map that was given to us 2.5 hours before the second policy session, before the hearing that we set, that we notified the public about, that they would have an opportunity to give input. A majority of this council didn't agree to have at least one more policy session after we received that input during the public hearing. I think that's terrible form. It's not good government. We've told the public, we notified them that we would have at least 3 more opportunities for public input, if not 4. And as Councilor Kapuska, formerly Peterson, pointed out in her memo that she provided us and that she just said, there's no rush to adopt this map. We don't have to adopt it under her recommendation until August 1st of 2022. This is only February. So I'm very opposed to the adoption of this map. I don't think it's compact enough. We haven't received enough input, or we haven't considered it. We haven't done enough analysis. And I think it hurts the older parts of the city. It is setting us up so the older neighborhoods will have less representation on this council. Under this proposed map, 10 of the 11 council members can be living north of War Memorial Drive. That means we could have only 1 council member that lives on the southern part, south of War Memorial Drive, on this council. To me, that is not good representation. We need diverse representation racially and geographically. We are hurting and diluting the power of the older neighborhoods. The city is only strong if all of the parts of our city are strong and being represented. It dilutes the power of the West Bluff and the older neighborhoods, and it is not a good map. So I hope the council will reconsider and give the public meaningful opportunity to give input to help us develop a better map. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just would like to say, regardless of whatever happens tonight with this map, this definitely wasn't an easy process to go through, because as a rookie counselor, you run for a district based off of how it looks at that time, and now here a year later, potentially I'm going to lose constituents that I interact with daily, that I get the phone calls from daily, that I meet with monthly, and it's tough, and it's tough. And so whatever happens tonight, I just want to publicly acknowledge those that I've been representing the last year. That it's been an honor and a privilege to serve you in this capacity. And I'm always going to be a resource for you. My mantra is always district focused, but maintaining that citywide perspective. And those new constituents that I may be inheriting, you have someone whose best ability is their availability. And I'm going to work for you, just as if you had voted for me in the last election. So this is not an easy process by no means, but regardless of the outcome, I'm ready to get to work for whoever I'm representing in whatever District 4 looks like. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to remind the public and the council that The procedure that we used to arrive at this map was public. It was voted on. All those other meetings were always, I think, quite clearly only going to be used if needed. So we didn't know how many meetings we were going to have. We were going to have 2 meetings, 3, 4, 5, and that was quite clear, I believe. So, and I believe that this map came to us with a unanimous vote. Secondly, Madam Corporation Counsel, we've got 2 dates to talk about. Is that correct? One is to ratify the map. The other is the effective date. Is that correct? Okay. I'd like us to consider ratifying the map. That's fine with me. But pushing that effective date off enough time that the Corporation Counsel might speak to our Attorney General. Because as you said, the statutes that we're following don't really take into account our situation in Peoria. And to have just not quite a year ago, a district election here where people campaigned and they want to represent this, District 1 or District 2 or District 3, and then in 1 year, that's out, and we're going for different boundaries. It seems to me that that's a little problem as well. And if we could give you the time to speak and to try to get an opinion from the Attorney General on our situation here, so that perhaps the effective date of this new map could be prior to petitions being taken out for our next district election, which would be 3 years from now, or a little less. Do you think that if you were given that kind of time, you might be able to get a favorable decision? I know you can't predict that you will.
I feel like I can predict this one. I don't think the state attorney general would step foot into providing us any guidance on the matter and would tell us to discuss it with our own local election attorneys. Attorney Lenzini and I debated that exact point at length, and we will tell you that even if between the two of us we could come up with some wiggle room to say that map is not effective for 2 more years, if you take off your council person hat and put on your candidate hat, you do want to make sure that the candidates that will be running, because we have a 1-year residency requirement, right, are living in the effective boundaries of the new district for at least 1 year prior. You also want to make sure, whether we like the fact that incumbents are a consideration under the law in Illinois, that the incumbents do have the opportunity to work with those constituents prior to the election. So you have to think of it both as sitting council members, but when the fact that incumbents are a consideration in how we draw the maps, we do think of what do the candidates need in a year or two in order to effectively campaign.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I was just sitting here, and I was just thinking about everything that has transpired and what people are saying, and we did unanimously approve this in record time, and we've heard from a lot of people, and people have asked us to wait, to listen to them. These are the folks who put us in office, and I think, we at least owe it to them to hear what their recommendations are, or at least what they would like to see before we rush. This is a process we only do once every 10 years, and I think even though we unanimously approved it, I think by rushing to go ahead and ratify it and finalize it, we're not respecting the voters' wishes in terms of at least giving them one opportunity to hear their voices before we make this decision that's going to have an impact for the next 10 years. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Regenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we all agree this was a pretty daunting task. When you look at the numbers you mentioned, Mayor, the first district needing to grow by almost 4,000 people and 5,500 plus people being relocated from the 5th district. I mean, those two things, as the bookends, just demonstrate the magnitude of the shift that we've seen in the city, which is perhaps a discussion for another night. But looking at this map, this will be the third map that I've run under or served under, let me say that, as the 3rd District Councilman. And I have to tell you that this map is probably the cleanest, most easily defined map that I've seen as councilman. Looking at the criteria that we set up and that are dictated to us, equal population, compact and contiguous, respect for geographic boundaries, and something that I think a number of us repeated over and over is using the major thoroughfares as much as possible. This map really hits every single one of those. You can argue, obviously there's plenty of room to argue, but for me as a district council member, I can point out clearly how the lines are drawn, and that you go up 74 to Knoxville, to War Memorial, to University, boom. That's clear and concise and easily to understand. I will definitely be supporting this and encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I think the effective date Councilman Euler put out of May 1st is appropriate. Gives us time to make sure the constituents are aware of this. I would still argue with the state law, but that's not for tonight. So I think we've looked at this in multiple ways, and I would just encourage my colleagues to support this and allow us to begin getting acquainted with those new constituents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a couple of points I'd like to make. First of all, on the effectivity date, regardless of what map we pass, we know that there's an extreme disparity in the size of the current districts based on the census result. So in taking our constituents into consideration, I think the best thing that we can do for them is to, whatever map we enact, swiftly make that change, because we risk leaving a significant number of our constituents in limbo of what part of the district am I in? Am I represented by this person? Am I represented by that person? And I think once an official map is passed, that the best thing that we can do for our constituents is execute that official change quickly. Back to the decision of this map, there's probably 10 things I can think of off the top of my head that I would like to change about this map. And I'm sure that everyone around this horseshoe can do the same thing. And if we all try to push for those 10 things, we're never actually going to create a map. And much to my surprise, this process happened more quickly than planned, but I think it's because it became very evident that we found things that we agreed on, and we found larger scale commonalities and coalesced around this version 2.3 map. It made sense to a significant majority. More time delay to discuss it and mull it over isn't going to change the outcome, I don't believe. There was nowhere close to a 6-5 split on this. It was a very quick and easy majority, and actually to the point that it even came out unanimous out of our committee, which definitely comes as a surprise to me. And so to me, I think we did the right thing. This makes sense, and I am supportive of this map. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more comments, the motion is to approve map 2.3 effective May 1st, 2022. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 2 nays, Jackson and Jensen. Madam Clerk?
We are at unfinished business, and there are no items under unfinished business, so if anybody has anything.
Is there any other unfinished business?
No. Then we are at new business.
Is there any new business? Councilmember Regenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think most of my colleagues saw the email that came out yesterday afternoon, but I just want to make sure that this is getting the full press treatment that it deserves, that the nonprofit capital program applications are now available. So any of our nonprofits that are in town that own their own building and are in need of capital structural improvements, you have until March 18th to apply. We, again, are using our American Rescue Plan dollars here of $450,000. So I think this is something that we're all pleased to be able to offer. And I just want to make sure that those involved with our nonprofits are aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Graham?
Thank you, Mayor Lee. I think our city is reinvigorated by some of the successes we've had in this 50-square-mile city in the area of containing and controlling gun violence and making it easier for people to feel that they're safe, that they can go out into their neighborhoods unmolested. The police department has been doing a tremendous job for our constituents. The other thing that beckons us with much promise as we move forward is the passage through bipartisanship, the hard infrastructure bill. As we drove here, as we've been driving around the city, what have we noticed? One of the things that I notice is, of course, what's inevitable every year when we have the freeze and thaw cycle. Our roads are popping all over, potholes that are so huge, one could almost do great damage if one hit some of these to one's vehicle. I have encouraged my constituents when they see these, they can certainly feel free to call me, and God knows I've reported plenty of these to Cy Maroon. But I've encouraged them to call the 494 CARE number, 309-494 CARE number. They shouldn't feel bashful about reporting these. Some of these cannot wait. They just can't wait, and that's why I strongly suggest that they contact me on some of these huge holes that just seem to come out of nowhere and are public safety hazards. Well, I processed a number of these. Public Works dutifully went out, filled these holes temporarily. And then I called 494 CARE, Mr. Manager, just to see how it would respond, because if I'm going to tell my constituents to call, and again I want to say it, 309-494 CARE, I want to be sure I'm giving them the best direction possible. So by golly, after I got a report about a huge hole on Sheridan Road, Cy Maroon took care of it, by the way, but it came in over the weekend, I called the number. Well, there was no answer because they work Monday through Saturday, and I think Saturday they stop at 1. But guess what? Monday morning, 8 a.m., guess what? Chuck Grave got a call. They probably didn't know me from a barrel of oil. But I'm very pleased with the way that's working. And so we have money coming to us because our citizens pay federal, state, and local taxes. We have a hard infrastructure bill that has passed. Manager, my question, this is new business, is have we gotten guidelines on how we can spend that money yet from the feds so that once we get it, we can devise a plan of attack to start rebuilding this city?
Councilman, the short answer is no. We do not know yet how the federal government is planning on rolling those dollars out to the states and then out to local governments. What we do know is that they have said they're going to use their existing funding streams to roll those dollars out. So, for example, right now, the U.S. Department of Transportation has opened up what they call their RAISE grant, which is very similar to the Tiger grant that we were successful in receiving down in the Warehouse District on Washington Street. So we are working internally on preparing a grant application for that, for one of our major streets to try and do some major reconstruction of that. So we're going to continue to look at all of those avenues as those dollars come available, and then hopefully we'll get better clarity from the federal government through IDOT on how those transportation dollars are going to roll out as well.
Now, I know I've asked you this question before, and I was hoping there'd be a new wrinkle since I asked the question just a few days ago. This money then flows to Peoria through the state government?
The way that the funds are going to be rolling out is through their existing mechanisms. So it may be that the federal dollars go directly to our Metropolitan Planning Organization, PUATS, that will be the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission, that will be working on trying to allocate some of those federal dollars out to our Tri-County region, as we normally do. When we see there are federal projects and federal funds available, they will allocate those funds on behalf of the region and the urbanized area.
Now, Manager, we already have money set aside for Western, for the balance of MacArthur Highway, for Glen. We can just keep going. Knoxville, very important money coming in. Are we going to be able to, what's your best, I hate to say this, but can we use these on streets like Frink, like Glenwood, this money to rebuild infrastructure? Or is it just for main corridors? Because we have a lot of our major corridors covered. Nebraska's another one. Are we going to have flexibility to use these on streets where we do not already have monies allocated to do the repair?
I think that the answer to that is to be determined. I don't know if I have a clear answer on how that's going to roll down to our residential streets and how we can utilize those dollars in that manner. I think that what we're going to certainly see is that the federal government's infrastructure funding is going to be directed towards the existing pots, which is really kind of focused on major thoroughfares. But we don't know yet. If there's any additional dollars and how that's going to roll out, that's still to be determined and is still being worked on.
Well, I, for one, hope that they will give the localities flexibility on such matters, and I appreciate your update, Manager. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council, and I've received one letter in my office. This is from Terry Colbus, President of the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria. As you know, redistricting is vitally important to the future of the City of Peoria. Done properly, it ensures every voter has the opportunity to be heard and counted. The League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria would encourage you to reflect that goal in the process as well as the end product. The League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria Board of Directors met on February 14th and voted to express certain concerns. The City Council has canceled 3 public input opportunities on city redistricting proposals. Furthermore, we believe the chosen map, version 2.3, is inconsistent with our established and long-standing values for city redistricting. The board is disappointed you advertised public meetings on March 1st, March 15th, and potentially March 29th, and then withdrew that invitation. Those meetings would have provided needed opportunities for the public to understand map version 2.3 and react to it. Unfortunately, the decision to vote on map version 2.3 on February 22nd eliminates that possibility. The board also discussed mapped version 2.3 and its impacts. The League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria's position on redistricting city districts states, the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria feels that a good redistricting plan should include 1. Districts of generally equal population. Variations from average should be no more than 5%, with less than 3% being more desirable. 2. Compact and contiguous districts. 3. Districts which would not divide minority population areas unless the above requirement cannot be met without such divisions. 4. Use of major thoroughfares as boundary lines unless the above requirements cannot be met with such lines. 5. Precinct changes only when necessary to meet the above requirements. Consensus does not relate to precinct changes, which may be necessary for other reasons than redistricting. The above items are listed in order of importance as expressed by the membership of the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria. These criteria are consistent with standards set by the League of Women Voters of Illinois for state redistricting and the position of the League of Women Voters of the United States. The League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria understands redistricting is a complex process which involves multiple and sometimes conflicting considerations. Such conflicts are why our values are listed in order of importance. While it is clear that map version 2.3 is consistent with districts of generally equal population, we are less confident that map version 2.3 is compact, does not provide minority population areas, and uses majority thoroughfares as boundary lines. The board wants to play a constructive role in public policy that reflects established League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria positions and the experience and wisdom of our board members. Therefore, we encourage the City Council to support 1. A revised schedule for approving a redistricting map that allows for more robust public input through additional public hearings, and 2. A map that is more responsive to the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria criteria for a fair and equitable redistricting plan. Thank you in advance for your consideration of our views. And that concludes what I have for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you have any cards from the people here? No cards?
No
Okay,
cards.
thank you.
And then we are at adjournment to executive session.
Council?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We do need to adjourn to executive session for 5 ILCS 120-2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee. C5, the purchase or lease of property. C6, the price, to set the price for sale or lease of property. C11, pending litigation. And C2, collective bargaining matters. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn to exec? Moved by Councilman Seer, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously.